I have a plea for all the barbecue restaurants, and I say this as a former vegetarian. Stop making me choose. I cannot choose between lynx and brisket. I cannot choose between pork ribs and beef ribs. I cannot choose between pulled pork and grilled chicken. I cannot choose between macaroni and cheese and collard greens. No justice, no peace. We want greens, we want mac and cheese. No justice, no peace. We want pork, we want beef. And it is anti-black that you expect me to tell some of these items, come on, let's go to a higher place. And to say to the other items, I'm sorry, you can't come with me right now. What we need now more than ever is true justice, true equality, true inclusion. What we need now is a sampler platter. Look to your neighbor and say, a sampler platter. I need a little bite of everything on the menu, including dessert. I want 2 ribs, 1 link, 1 chicken quarter, pulled pork on just a bottom bun. I want a fistful of brisket and a scoop of macaroni and cheese, a scoop of potato salad, a scoop of collard greens, and then go ahead and get me one of them styrofoam clam shells, and inside of there, I want you to scoop me a bite of banana pudding and a bite of key lime pie and one of them little corn muffins. And I want you to tell the devil, I want you to go ahead and tell the devil that he could keep that coleslaw to himself. Somebody say sampler platter. No justice, no peace. We want greens, we want mac and cheese. No justice, no peace. We want pork, we want beef. When you add that sampler platter to the menu, then and only then will you be the sauce boss, the winner of the flame game, the rib tickler, the smoking joker, the highest on the hog, and a true fighter for equality. No justice, no peace. We want pork and we want beef. All right. Welcome back, Black Stars. I'm Anastasia X, and I love art almost as much as I love Black people. So I started writing Black Star reviews to shine a light on the work of Black creatives in New York City and beyond. Heavy on the beyond today because I saw the play Fat Ham in sunny Los Angeles, California. And listen, when a show goes on the road, it's sometimes worth chasing it around. Was Fat Ham worth the wait? Was it worth the chase? Was it worth the cross-country flight? Let's talk about it. We are dedicating today's episode to E. Lynn Harris, who is the author of 11 novels, 10 of which made it to the New York Times bestsellers list. But as we pour this water, I don't just want to talk about the books that he wrote. I want to go back to the beginning of his life because it's actually a very moving story. So E. Lynn Harris grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he went to the University of Arkansas to study journalism, where he was, and listen to how busy he sounds, the president of his school's Alpha Phi Alpha chapter, the first male cheerleader, and the first Black editor of the yearbook. So clearly an overachiever, this E. Lynn. For 13 years after college, he sold computers for IBM, HP, AT&T, more acronyms related to computers, and he lived in a few different cities, but he was actually miserable the entire time. He was feeling very tormented because he was hiding his sexual orientation. As a result of all this torment, he tried to take his own life in 1990, but he survived. And this attempt would become a real turning point in his life and also in his career. He went on to write his first book entitled Invisible Life, which he self-published 4 years later. With his self-published paperbacks in hand, he used his skills as a computer salesman to go door to door at Black beauty salons and Black-owned bookstores selling his book. And eventually, it would get picked up by a major publisher, Doubleday, and be mass-produced. Now, that first book, Invisible Life, was a coming-of-age story about being gay. And for years, people would ask him, is this book about you, Lynn? And he would tell them, this book is fiction. And even after that, it took him many, many more years to come out publicly. Lynn wrote novels about gay culture, down low culture, and queer love about 10 years before that Oprah episode where they talked about being on the down low and it became like a household phrase. So Lynn was talking about it before it was trendy. He was the originator. He would go on to teach writing at the college level. He won a James Baldwin Award for his book, If This World Were Mine, and he got to see another one of his novels called Not a Day Goes By be turned into a musical. Lynn died at 54 years old due to complications related to high blood pressure, but you can read his memoir, What Becomes of the Broken Heart, to learn more. Even though he's gone, his work lives on, his learned boldness lives on, and we remember him for the trails that he blazed. Cheers to Lynn Harris on finding not only peace, but abundance and liberation through self-acceptance. All right, let's talk context, my little riblets. In 2022, Fat Ham made its off-Broadway premiere at the Public in partnership with the National Black Theater. And then it was on Broadway from March to July of 2023, and it won 5 Tony nominations and a Pulitzer Prize for drama. There's only one winner per year for the Pulitzer, which is huge. And you can't even see the show in New York right now, but you can see it in LA, which is where I saw it. Now, the playwright, James Ijames, went to Morehouse, and that's also where he fell in love with Shakespeare. He played Hamlet in a student production, and he connected really deeply with this idea of Hamlet having to accept who he is. So the playwright is queer, the leading character is queer, but it would be a gross oversimplification to say that that's the only twist that James has added to this story. And I have to say that I loved this interview with James in the Playbill. These are the things that I want to know when I see a show. What inspires you? Where are you in the show? How has it evolved from the moment you started writing it to now? And for all my fellow writers out there, James reveals in this interview that he actually posts ideas for stories that he won't write on his website. So if you're ever looking for a place to start with a new story, maybe start there. The show stars Nikki Crawford, Herbie Holland, Billy Eugene Jones, Adrianna Mitchell, Marcel Spears, Benja Kay Thomas, and Matthew Elijah Webb. When people ask me in passing what the show is about, I'm forced to give them like my 5-second answer, which is, it's a contemporary spin on Hamlet that takes place at a Black family's barbecue in North Carolina. But this is my show, and I have more than 5 seconds, so I can give you the whole story. Let's talk summary. This show is a spin on Hamlet by the one and only William Shakespeare. Now, remember when I did my review of Spiritus, Virgil's Dance, and I gave you a Cliff Notes version of Dante's Divine Comedy in order for you to be able to access the idea of this character, Virgil? Well, I'm gonna tell you what I told you then. If you want somebody who is going to break down all the unique facets of William Shakespeare's work, really get into the nitty-gritty, or even just keep all the characters straight, you're going to have to go find another channel and then come back. Because classical Shakespeare just doesn't do it for me, y'all. Like, you know I'm a words girly. So I get so looped up in the Old English that I don't even know what's going on half the time. It feels like no matter how they cast it, no matter how contemporary the setting, I just cannot seem to grasp the story. And don't let there be people with rhyming names coming on and off the stage delivering messages, because before I know it, Mercutio, Horatio, and Neo have all merged into the same person. And sometimes they have actors playing different roles, and that really, really messes with me, because they'll just put a hat on him and say it's somebody new. And I'm like, no, that's that same guy from before, only now he's in a disguise. I'll even give you an example. I had very high hopes when I went to see Danielle Brooks in Much Ado About Nothing for Shakespeare in the Park in the summer of 2019. I had even taken some students with me, and when the kids turned to me and said, "Miss Neely, what's going on?" I just had to pretend I didn't hear them, because my only answer would have been, Girls, I don't know. When Classical Theater of Harlem does Shakespeare, I seem to get it because it's usually enough body language for me to fill in the blanks. So shout out to them. Y'all make it accessible for me. And so did James Ijames. So I'm gonna pass on the favor and try to make Hamlet accessible for you. And if it's helpful, The Lion King is loosely based on Hamlet as well. So in the Shakespeare version, Hamlet is the prince. His dad, the king, recently died, and his uncle has since married his mom and moved into his house. And the uncle is a real nasty guy. Like, he don't have no couth, and he don't like Hamlet at all. So it's almost like Cinderella, if Cinderella's dad had married her fast-tailed aunt. Hamlet is upset about his uncle taking his dad's place, but he doesn't feel like he can or should do anything about it until his father's ghost appears to him, talking about, "Your uncle murdered me so he could take over my life. You gotta kill him, avenge me." So Hamlet decides to investigate further because he's not positive that his dad's ghost is giving him good intel. Apparently his dad was kind of a spiteful guy, so blaming someone else for his murder after he's been murdered seems like very on brand for him. Hamlet uses a theater troupe to act out a murder, and while the theater troupe is acting, he's just watching the uncle, trying to see how he's responding, like some sort of old school lie detector test. When Hamlet finally does believe that his uncle did kill his father, he murders his uncle. And this sets off a chain reaction of more murders, and basically everybody is dead by the end. But in between the beginning and the end, Hamlet says some of the most well-known lines in the show, and you probably know these. To be or not to be, that is the question. And the rest is silence. And to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. I can't translate these lines for you, but they're famous, so let's know them. Overall, the play is very tragic and everybody dies except Hamlet's friend Horatio, who lives to tell the story. Now that is a super abbreviated version of Hamlet because the original play has 5 acts and 34 characters, and fun fact, it is Shakespeare's longest play. So again, you'll have to get those little tiny details elsewhere, but don't forget to come back. Fat Ham, on the other hand, is 95 minutes, no intermission, and only has 8 characters. There is one person who plays 2 people, but it's very clear when they're each version of themselves. So when people tell you that Fat Ham is a version of Hamlet, don't go in expecting the only variation to be that it's a black cast. And that's what I really love about it. While there's definitely a Hamlet-inspired plotline that runs through the whole show, Fat Ham truly is its own story. Fat Ham is about a guy named Juicy who lives with his mom in North Carolina. He's in college, but he goes to school online, which is kind of a running joke throughout the play. His dad, who he never really got along with, has been in the ground all of a week. And Juicy and his cousin Tio are setting up for a wedding reception, a very casual wedding reception, in the backyard. But it's not Juicy's wedding, it's his mom, because she has married his dad's brother. Yes, the dad that just died. And I can't imagine any circumstance in which I'd be okay with my mom dating one of my uncles, but this situation is especially terrible because Juicy's uncle is just a very distasteful guy, and he takes this whole man of the house role very seriously, and he keeps throwing his weight around. So poor Juicy, he's lost his dad. His new uncle dad is a real jerk. He's going to online school. He's worried about his mom, and he feels so out of place because he's trying to figure himself out. And then the ghost of his father appears to him. And Ghost Dad is like, "Juicy, your uncle killed me. Kill him back. Avenge him." And it's pretty clear that Juicy is just not the type to physically hurt anyone. So Ghost Dad has to come back a few times, each time more hilarious than the last, to remind him of his murderous assignment. As his uncle increasingly gets on his nerves, Juicy starts to take the whole avenging thing a little more seriously. And through a game of charades, he finds out that his uncle did, in fact, kill his father. The whole play takes place on the same day. It's like the longest backyard barbecue wedding reception that you've ever been to. And what's a backyard barbecue without some church friends? In addition to Juicy, cousin Tio, his mom, and his uncle dad, we also have a church lady named Robbie and her 2 adult kids, Opal and Larry. So while Juicy is trying to figure out how to kill his uncle, he's also figuring out what to make of Larry, because Larry confesses something to Juicy that Juicy really does not expect. Juicy is queer, but this play, to me, isn't about Juicy's coming out with his sexuality. It's about Juicy stepping into his potential, coming out of his shell, and accepting the possibility of greatness for himself. Everyone around him can see that he's special and different, but he spent most of his life hiding. In the original Hamlet, all but one character dies at the end. Thank God this is not the case in Fat Ham, because you're really going to fall in love with every character. And I think this speaks to the talent of the cast and also the depth of the writing. But you see redemption for each one of them, and you don't want anyone to die. But there is death in the show. Most notably, the death of the veneer, the death of the persona that you use to cover your truest self. The final words of the show are "see what I see," and I just want to do a little detail here. In the original play, Hamlet is dating this girl named Ophelia, and when she breaks up with him, his response is so out of pocket that she thinks that he's really lost his mind. So she delivers this monologue that's like, "Wow, his mind was truly something special, and now he has marshmallows for brains. And it's even more crazy that I fell in love with this dodo bird, and I'm looking back over this relationship like, damn, he really had me tripping." And her monologue ends with, "Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see." And I can see that this line has been reclaimed and presented in Fat Ham. I'll share my interpretation, but just know that I'm still puzzling about this. Ophelia felt like she could see through Hamlet's madness to the real him, the version of him that she fell in love with. But in this version, "See What I See" is an encouragement to all of the characters in the show, as well as the audience, to look deeper to their truest selves and to allow that person to shine. That's my best try. Sometimes when you're interpreting other people's art, you take it in a different direction than the artist intended, and sometimes you're just flat out wrong. I guess I won't know until James Ijames calls. Was that even a summary of Fat Ham? Let's go to thoughts. Thought 1. This show had the blackest one-liners and exchanges, but they were lightning quick, so I can't do my favorite lines out of context segment because I just wasn't fast enough to write them down word for word. But this is what I could grab. "You ain't hungry, you greedy. Put that down and eat some raisins." I heard that as a Black child. There was a lot of genuine concern for somebody having the sugar. White people were referred to as translucent. The family also said grace over a barbecue meal that thanks God not only for the pig, but for the grapes and the vinegar that made the sauce that gave it its undeniable tang. And my personal favorite moment was when one character leaned in toward another character to see what he smelled like. And when asked, he explains that he smells like grease. And if that is not the blackest thing, do you know how self-conscious I was about smelling like grease as a kid? Especially after gym class when you would break a little sweat? I thank God for deliverance from Royal Crown hairdress and Blue Magic. Woo! The Valley of the Shadow of Death. It is greasy down there. Lines like that are why we have to protect Black playwrights at all costs, because William Shakespeare could never. My second thought, Billy Eugene Jones. This man is quickly becoming one of my favorite actors. Both times I've seen him, he's been more of the comic relief, but I know he's got more in there, and I can't wait to see it. I spent all of Fat Ham thinking, where do I know this guy from? And at the end of the show, I was like, oh, I should have known. He was the wiry character, Gidlow Judson, in Pearly Victorious, which is the play written by Ossie Davis that just finished its Broadway run in February of this year. I don't know how tall Billy Eugene Jones is, but he is always the tallest person on stage. And he's slim, but his body is like just so alive. And in Fat Ham, he plays both the ghost dad and the terrible uncle. And he plays both of those characters with such panache. I'm telling you, go see whatever he's in. You will love him. I can't find him on Instagram, so I don't know what he's doing next, but let's make a pact to all stay tuned. Third thought. Theater magic. When you have a ghost in a show, that means there has to be a little magic involved, or at least there should be. One time I went to see this show where the ghosts were just regular people wearing white clothes, and that was not ghosty enough for me. But in this show, the ghost dad, Billy Eugene Jones, would just pop up out of nowhere. At one point, we're watching the play, the characters are in the foreground, and I noticed that the barbecue grill in the background is starting to smoke. And I'm thinking, oh no, somebody burning them ribs. And then Ghost Dad popped out. And he kept popping out of places like that. He was everywhere, in places you'd never expect. And they pulled it off so flawlessly. At one point, you think someone is under a blanket, and then they come walking across the stage while you can still see the outline of the body under the blanket. I love stuff like that. The first version of this play was actually a film, so I just think it's so cool that they were able to bring some of those film elements, like things that are pretty basic in film, to stage, which is where they're absolutely thrilling. Final thought is on the message of the show. There is one quote that I was able to catch quickly enough to write down, and it says, "You begin to consider what your world would be if you chose pleasure over harm." And this brings me back full circle to E. Lynn Harris, the author to whom we dedicated this episode. He was on the brink of wanting to leave this world. That's how much pain he was in. He was enduring so much harm that it seemed easy for him to just harm himself. But when we choose pleasure, there's so much joy, there's so much abundance, and even more important, there's peace. So please, please, if there is something that is holding you back, something that is causing you harm, start taking actions to dissolve it. Prioritize pleasure, prioritize feeling happy and feelings of enjoyment. Life is a blessing, it's a gift that we get to be here. Pleasure, not harm, is what you should be feeling more often than not. So my review, I am giving Fat Ham 4 stars. I loved the blackness of this show. It's like being in your auntie's backyard at the cookout. And I don't know if your family does karaoke at the cookout, but maybe we should add that in. I think it would be a fun addition. I love that this show told me a Shakespearean story in a language and with a cast of characters that spoke to me. I love that this show's reoccurring message is to be yourself, to free your mind, to step into your divinity. Many thanks to the playwright, the directors of the New York and Los Angeles productions, the talented cast, and everybody behind the scenes, especially the ones who made the magical parts believable. Who would I take to this show? In one ad that I saw, I think on Instagram, it said, if you've never seen a play before, see Fat Ham. And I think that pretty much sums it up. It has a little bit of something for everyone, as long as you take somebody that you can laugh with. For your hardcore theater people, the Shakespeare element is going to give them some fat to chew on. For your theater newcomers, the authenticity and the relatability is going to fall right off the bone. And for your people who prefer musicals, this show has some musical performances that are finger-licking good. Am I making you hungry? Because that's how I felt watching people eat, talk about, and cook barbecue for 95 minutes with no intermission. I needed a brisket so bad. I'm in the audience like, can y'all spare a rib for me? Damn. So after the show, you're going to want barbecue. And my friend Gabby, who was my gracious host in LA and also a birthday queen, she loves JR's Barbecue, which is in Culver City, just a 15-minute drive from the Geffen Theater, which is where we saw the show. She says there's always a line at JR's, so you might want to get yourself a little snack on your way over there. And if they have a sampler platter, I would suggest you order it. In closing, if you have a chance to see Fat Ham in any city, just go ahead and do it. And if you're in LA, please support Terrell Alvin McCraney in his inaugural season as artistic director at the Geffen Theater. He wrote the play that Moonlight was based on. He has an Academy Award, he's a Tony nominee, he's got excellent taste, and he's going to bring some amazing work to Los Angeles. He'll also be producing some of his own work at the Geffen, so I would advise you to get a season pass because it's looking like it's going to be a fantastic season of theater at the Geffen. When you go, whether you see Fat Ham anywhere in the world or you're at the Geffen to see something under the new artistic direction, please tag me, leave a comment under this video. I would love to see a picture of you at the show. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you will subscribe to get notified about the next episode. I also hope that you'll follow me on Instagram and TikTok to keep up on every artistic experience. If you're in New York, I'm going to be on a panel about art at a gallery in Brooklyn. So check out my Instagram for details and also to RSVP. This will be my first live in-person event, so I am very pumped, but I'm also a little nervous. So it would be so special to have some Black stars in the audience for me. In the meantime, Black love and starlight. Stay shining.